All right, Yellhorn Podcast, episode number 6. Super special episode this week, guys. We made it yet another Yellhorn Podcast. We made it yet another week. Sorry, I messed up the intro horribly. It's super special today. We have a special guest today. His name is Wolfe Glick, WolfeyVGC. He's the 2016 VGC World Champion, Pokémon VGC World Champion, and Players Cup 2 Champion. He's an amazing content creator and somebody that probably a lot of you guys know. It's going to be super interesting today. We've had a lot of VGC players on the podcast before, people from the TCG community, people on the podcast from the TCG community. Today we have somebody from the VGC community. So what's going on, Wolf? How you doing, bro?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk about TCG VGC overlap stuff.
Yeah, for sure, man. And of course, as always, my co-host Zach Lesage. What's going on, Zach?
I mean, we're chilling. Just hopped out the shower and we're rearing to go. All clean and all good. Most days I do not, but we're here.
Yeah, we're recording a bit earlier than we typically do. I'm definitely not a morning person per se, but when you got somebody like this on the podcast, you make sure that you don't sleep through it. That's the key. That's the key thing to note there.
We went fishing and we caught a big fish.
That's right. We did go fishing.
I guess we caught a wolf. I don't know how you hunt a wolf. Spears.
People hunt.
That'd be a really good YouTube video, bro.
People hunt.
How do you hunt a wolf?
Yeah, I think they're endangered. I don't know.
No, yeah, I'm not actually saying let's hunt wolves.
Right.
But in a hypothetical sense, if this was, I don't know how the people who did it that made them endangered, how that happened, but I'm against animal cruelty, all that stuff.
Maybe I'll do how to hunt wolf hunters. Go after.
How to hunt wolf hunt. That might be a good one. They might also be endangered though, considering they're not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It might not work out in general.
Protect the wolves.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Off to a good start. It's going to be a good one today, guys. So, of course, with most of our guests, we'll go through a little interview segment. We're going to ask him a few things. Also, we just wrapped up the Union Cup, which was this past weekend, which was a super cool crossover event from TCG and VGC, which Wolf did participate in. So we'll talk about a little bit about that. We'll talk about his his career sort of as a player, his recent successes, as well as his content creation, and we'll try to hit on all the bases. But yeah, I don't know. We're here, guys. We're doing it. What do we want to go over first? What do you think, Zach?
I mean, I think we go. I think we should allow everyone to introduce themselves. So as much as you and I know a little bit about Wolf, Wolf knows a little bit about Wolf. Some of these TCG obstagoons might not know about Wolf. So I mean, I think kind of just like a general, like, if you want to give us the couple minute who you are, where you're from, where you've been, what you doing, kind of spiel. I don't want to ask you any particular questions that let me know how you would introduce yourself if we were going on a nice date or something like that.
Sure. Well, yeah, well, maybe a friend date, but
Right.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
If I'm going on a date with somebody, the first thing I'm talking about isn't necessarily Pokemon, but
I mean, same.
But yeah, anyway,
that's a good thing.
Yeah, my name is Wolfe Glick. I am from the DC metro area. I have been playing Pokemon for most of my life. I started playing the TCG when I was in about 2nd grade. I played all the way through 9th grade when I discovered VGC, and played that ever since. I went to school at Virginia Tech, which is in Southwest Virginia. I studied economics, and I got a dual degree with, it has a fancy title of computational modeling and data analytics, but it's basically just like a fancy way of saying big data, with a minor in business. After I graduated, I went to work in DC. I worked for about 1.5 years and then started pursuing content full time. In terms of hobbies, I like to run. I like to sing, though I'm not doing much of either right now in the current pandemic. I also really like board games. I was hosting a weekly board game night every week for like friends and friends of friends, pre-pandemic, of course, not happening right now. And yeah, in terms of Pokemon, I don't really have any notable TCG accomplishments, but in terms of VGC, I have the most regionals ever won, tied the record with 6. I won U.S. Nationals twice and North American Internationals last year. I have, I think, 5 or 6 World's Top 16s with 3 World's Top Cuts, since 2 of those were bubbles. maybe five World Top 16s it would be then, I think. I've won the World Championships. I have a second of the World Championships, the top 8 of the World Championships, and I'm the only player to have won every level of event in VGC. So regionals, nationals, internationals, worlds, Players Cup, and then mid-season and Premier Challenge as well. So, and Wi-Fi tournament, IC, which is not international challenge. I think that's pretty much it. I really like VGC. I've been playing for a long time. I think it's really cool because like no matter how good you are, you can always get better. Like I don't think I'm near my peak yet, but I do feel myself getting better, which is nice. I think that's kind of like a brief couple minute overview.
Cool. All right, Zach, you go next.
I don't know if I want to compare to those accomplishments, man. Yay! That's crazy. I didn't know that you were the only player to kind of have the complete set. It's something that I'm kind of aspiring to do so because TCG has had some events that have been discontinued. So I'm one of the only players who currently plays the game to have won a Battle Roads, to win a gym challenge. I was also able to win the same Players Cup as you just for the TCG, so I have one of those. Unfortunately, I only have a second at an international championships, so I have to turn that into a first, and then I have to win Worlds. So for me, I think like if I ever had an out in this game, it'd be after winning an internationals and after winning a Worlds. But I don't know if it's something where like I would ever quit the game if I won Worlds. My brother actually won Worlds in TCG in 2010 and continued to play for a little bit after that. But I feel like there's it either presents a fire or it puts out a fire. For you, like I would say that, would you say that you winning Worlds was a boost? Or was it a weird feeling where you're like, I became the best in that moment? Because like I think anyone would agree that winning the World Championships doesn't necessarily make you a best player. It makes you a best player in that snapshot of time.
Yeah.
And then like you see World Championships that champions, they just don't proceed to do anything after that. Whereas you're very active in the game. So like, where did it put you?
I think for me, like winning Worlds was my goal, right? And especially after getting second in 2012, where I just barely missed. When I won Worlds, I was like, okay, like I can stop now. Like I can walk away from this and I can feel like good. I accomplished my goal. But the key word there is can, not like I was still, the reasons why I was playing in the first place were still relevant. Like I still really enjoyed playing. I still really enjoyed the process of getting better. The friends that I've made through this game are very important to me. So I didn't really have an incentive to stop, but it kind of changed my mindset in general, where like I was like less hard on myself, if that makes sense. Like because I was like so driven towards this goal and I was so determined to get there that like I wouldn't really allow any mistakes, which can be productive, but it can also be counterproductive at a certain point. And I think after I won Worlds, I just in my life happened to reach that point naturally where like I needed to have a little bit more grace with myself, because you can't always do everything perfectly, right? You can't always make no mistakes. You can't always be the best at every second of every day in the things that you care about. So I think it results in a mentality shift, but not necessarily in a motivation shift. Or I guess the motivation shift is more subtle, in which it was like less like desperation and more like just like for my own, like, let's see how far I can go with this, but if I have to stop, I've like gone far enough, you know?
Right. I think at some level you try to be better than everyone else, right? You try to be the best in the world, and then once you hit that, really your only other path is yourself, right? And you just try to be the best that you can be, right, at that moment.
I could have tried to be like the best of all time, which is a title Ray Rizzo currently holds as 3-time world champion, but since that's subjective, and I don't know, it's like I felt like it'd be pretty greedy, excuse me, if I was like, I've won Worlds, now I want to win 2 more times, or like 1 more time. Like it's not an easy tournament at all. It's one of the hardest I've played in. So I think I'm just seeing how far I can go at this point.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll let you go, Matt. You're good.
Okay. I mean, it's always subjective, right? And like in anything, whether it's an esport, in any sort of game, in any sport, right? I mean, everybody has their own sort of merits when it comes to who's the best of all time, and it's always going to be subjective no matter what. What were you going to say, Zach?
Yeah, we kind of have the same thing going on in the TCG, where a lot of players consider Jason Klitsinski our best player of all time. He's our 3-time world champion, so literally the same narrative. But then our current like best player in the game would probably be considered Tord Reklev by many, especially based off like I think he won 3 international championships in 1 year, which is just like
I think
disgusting. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like it's honestly like ridiculous. I don't even know how one finds themselves. I find the TCG riddled with luck at times, or like riddled like we have to make such a strong meta call, and all the cards changing on a quarterly basis and stuff like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. So not you may or may not know or may not like. Does Ray Rizzo still currently play Pokemon?
No, he likes to every year or two, or every between 1 and 3 years, he'll pop up and be like, "This is my comeback. This is my return," and then he'll disappear again. But he hasn't taken it seriously since 2012, which is the last Worlds he won. But he'll pop up every once in a while. But
Okay,
he still like plays or like, and sometimes his forays like they're like a little bit more like he tries harder, but most of the time he's just memeing. Like he came back a little bit in 2014. Like he actually had quite a strong season and qualified for Worlds, and then like at Worlds just like totally memed and like used like a ridiculous team, and I think he went. I don't know if I think he won 1 or 2 games, maybe two. Two is a stretch.
Okay.
I think he won 1 game. Yeah, so yeah, definitely not trying his hardest at the very least.
so do you know why he exited kind of like out of the game from taking it seriously? Like, is that like something where he's like, I don't think anyone's gonna win 3 worlds kind of vibe, or was it like a life thing, or?
I don't want to put words in his mouth, so this is
Sure.
this is what I
yeah.
This definitely
Yeah,
is.
it's completely like it's your opinion. I totally get that.
Yeah. But I would say that for him, like he won 3 times in a row, so like I don't know how much more there was left for him in the game. You know, like he proved that he wasn't only the best once, but like 3 times. So I don't. Maybe it was boring. Maybe it was he wasn't challenged, or maybe he wanted to leave his legacy untouched. You know, like to beat a legacy or to leave a legacy that probably would never be challenged. So I can't say for sure, but I think it was probably just like. I won Worlds once and I was content. So to do that 3 times consecutively, probably like what more can you do at that point? You can just keep winning Worlds, and I think maybe like he'd done it enough that he had like he like didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean I can see that.
Yeah, I mean that seems totally valid. Like for me, like to be fair, if I started winning Worlds every year, I probably would sign up. The prize support's pretty good nowadays.
Yeah,
so I
back
mean,
then the prize was like a trip. Like you want to trip with your friends to Japan, Hawaii, or New York. Like
okay, in that case, I could see how that might get a little bit boring, because I mean, I don't even think like winning Worlds nowadays is it the same for VGC where it's like the 25K.
Nope. Okay.
10K.
Yeah, and you guys get a bunch of you get like a ton of cards, right, or like a bunch of rare cards too.
Like I mean, I've never like I'm the person who's like always like does the worst at Worlds. Like I'll start off with like 3-1-1 or something like that, and then just like, oh cool, I double dead drew, or cool, I hit both bad matchups, or cool, it's just like it just never goes my way. Like I don't even have a top 32 at Worlds. I think my best placement's a top 64. I could win in regionals, I could win in Players Cup. I can't do anything at Worlds. It's like there's something on my back that I need to get off. But whatever, it's one of those things where yeah, we get there's a whole bunch of like random bonus prizes that no one really talks about. Sometimes they give you like sealed sets of cards. Sometimes they give you like boxes for a year. Sometimes they give you a I know my brother won a Worlds 2010 like leather jackets with his name stitched into it.
Yeah,
like it was kind of baller. I mean, he brought it to high school in the 9th grade. So I mean, he got a little bit roasted that day, and I think it never got worn again.
Oh no.
But it's one of those things like whatever. He was like a kid going to high school and thought his leather jacket with a gigantic shaman on the back was super cool. And I mean, I can totally imagine how you'd be the biggest loser in a high school, like especially back then, because Pokemon's not like Logan Paul popping off right now.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely kind of lost in like a time space, right? Where like Pokemon was super cool at one point, and then it kind of faded out, and then now we're kind of like back into this renaissance of it. But I don't know, man. I mean, if I'm the world champion, I'm gonna just rock that thing. I'm gonna be like, listen, are you the best in the world at anything? No, so you can't make fun of me. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. But no, I think the prizes are a bit better, especially nowadays than they were back then. And TCG is even better than VGC, or pretty significantly better than VGC. But yeah,
what's your IC prize? Because I never like look into it. I always thought that we were like equal. I know that sometimes our numbers have a bit of a discrepancy. Like from time to time, like there's a point where VGC had a lot of players.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, recently.
Like there was a point where VGC had a lot of players. Then there's times where I've seen VGC have very limited players.
Yeah.
Especially like it's seen there's some friends and family that I have that play in the juniors and seniors division.
Oh, yeah,
and like some of that is just like, you walked up and got the trophy, good for you stuff. And I mean, that's good for them. Like it's always good, but the grassroots, I feel, is like a bit of a yikes. But like in terms of it, like I don't like, is a regionals 5K for you guys?
I think we're okay. I think our system is the same because it's based on entrance. As I recall. So like we've had 1K regionals, we've had 5K regionals. I think they lowered the bars recently, so I think most regionals are between. Wait, no, not 5K. I think regionals cap at 3K if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while.
I have to look at the system. Like I've never like it's something for me where I was just like, I guess we're like kind of the same game, but I mean, I'm sure like if there was like the Pokken, like the best player in Pokken down here, I'd be like, what do you guys get? Is it the same? And they'd be like, I don't even think we exist anymore. I think they like give us an IOU. Like, I don't know. Like it's one of those things. It's weird how Pokemon's super connected, but like it's not at all. And at the same time, like not to say that VGC is more popular to the outside world, but I mean, I feel like not to say TCG players don't get the recognition to VGC players, but I mean, I find that there's also like that, like VGC is so much more mainstream, so much more esports, where TCG were like, PTCGO client has this many bugs, we can't even play our game properly. We're not going to become Hearthstone, we're not going to become Magic the Gathering Arena. We are going to be card basement dwelling Pokemon players for the rest of our lives, kind of.
Yeah, I feel that.
So
yeah,
that's kind of crazy. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't even know how to like bring it up. It's just like it to me it's like all kind of like boggling. It's a cloud that's kind of, I don't know, it's weird. But like sometimes it comes together, and that's a good segue to like Union Cup. Union Cup happened this past weekend.
Yeah, man. The Union Cup was super cool. So for those of you who don't know, it was like correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like a weekend long invitational tournament where some of the highest level VGC competitors like teamed up with some of the highest level TCG competitors, and then they did sort of like a coaching spree right the week before where they live streamed it, and then they kind of threw you guys into all the VGC players into a TCG tournament. I didn't actually I watched some of it, like I watched your stream quite a bit. But I never actually delved super into like how the structure worked. So was it was best of 3, but was it single elimination or was it double?
It was pools. So in my case, it was single elimination in the end. But yeah, basically they I think 4 pools of 4 each, so 16 players, and we were all assigned to coach, and then it was you played round robin pool, so you played 3 matches, and then the top 2 from each pool advanced. So for most people, I think everyone else made it out with 2 wins, and then in my group, 2 wins. There were 3 people with 2 wins, so the other 2 people made it out, and I unfortunately did not advance, which is okay. But good. Yeah, and then from there it's single elimination, best of 3 bracket style, top cut style.
Cool. So. You said that you played TCG, right, when you were younger, before you transitioned, but was this sort of your first experience with the Pokemon trading card game online, like the client, the game?
It was. I like briefly came back in 2014, back when regionals were TCG one day, VGC the other day. So I like played a TCG regional the first day and then VGC the second. But yeah, this is my first time with PTCGO. I was actually impressed. I know you were just talking about bugs, but I thought the client was actually quite good, especially compared to what, as someone who used to play TCG, what I would have expected from a TCG kind of simulator. Or like, I remember we had Verbank. Was that one of them?
Yeah.
Like I remember that was like one of the simulators, and it wasn't bad, but it was definitely much lower quality overall.
Yeah. It's kind of like a double-sided coin with PTCGO. There's a lot of things that people really want with the game, and it just doesn't seem to have too much support from Pokemon in general. But it's very glossy, like the animations and the visual aspect of it is very nice. It just doesn't really seem to have like too many updates, and they don't really seem to like overall change it. I think it's been out since 2012, Zach, or earlier maybe, right?
2011, maybe really? 2012. Like it's been out for like a while.
Yeah, and
I remember they were doing demos at Worlds 2014. I remember they still had PTCGO then. I'm just trying to think of like. Maybe they didn't have it out before then. I'm trying to think of the first set that they dropped it at.
I'm not sure.
2011 was
like-
when I switched, so I wouldn't know if they had it then. Like, it might have been 2011.
I
remember
think it was like late 2011 because I remember getting the booster pack codes for
I remember
winning Battle Roads.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had to have PTCGO if they had the booster pack codes.
Right.
Right before 2011 Worlds.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that people mainly complain about, there are some bugs like that can happen in the game, and obviously that's not great if you want to have like a competitive sort of organization within the game. But the big thing is like a ranked ladder. We just don't really have a really great ranked ladder system. And I know that, and I'm a big, okay, so I didn't do like an intro before, but for some context, I was a video game player for years and years before I got into TCG, which is actually just recently. I was never super into VGC, so like double battles and like the official, competitive format for Pokemon. I played a lot of like Smogon ladder. I don't know if you know much.
Yeah, I played Smogon as well for a while.
Yeah, so I was super big into like just 6-on-6, like OU and UU, especially back in like Gen 6 days, and Gen 7 as well. I played a lot of that. So that was like something I was super into. And I played a lot of Sword and Shield. I played all the video games. And one thing that was very cool with Sword and Shield is their like ranked system, right? For like Wi-Fi battles.
Absolutely.
And we just, and that kind of brought it to light with TCG, whereas we don't have really anything like that. But where was I going from here? I totally forget.
Ranked ladder?
Yeah, so I mean, like ranked ladder. What was I going to ask you? Oh no, okay. So I was asking you about your experience originally. Sorry, in the Union Cup playing the TCG online. So to pivot back to the Union Cup, you were playing ADP Zacian. So what did you think about that deck, Wolf?
It's kind of dumb, in my opinion.
Yes.
You heard it here. Probably not first, actually.
Yeah, no,
not first.
Not
a lot of people think that deck's very dumb.
So what happened was I was gonna play Colossal because Tord was like, "This deck is fun. You won Players Cup with Colossal,
yeah, be cool.
Like, yeah, it's like, and it's a good call right now because there's a lot of like, and my pool ended up being Pikarom and Eternatus.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, cool. And then I discovered Control, and I was like, this is exactly the way that I like to play the game. Like, this is how I used to like to play PTCG. Like, it's slow, it's boring. Like, you make one mistake, you lose. It's super funny. Like, I want to do this. And then what happened was I was notified that this tournament that I wanted to enter, but they hadn't had a date for, was going to be the same week, the same days as the TCG tournament. And it was going to start at 2 p.m. and the TCG tournament started at like 11:30. And I said, Tord, I really want to play in this TFT tournament, this other game that I've been working on. I really want to play. I can't play Control. It's too slow. I need to be able to get through my games quickly because I don't want to be playing two games at the same time because I'm not like great at either of these games. So I need to be able to focus on each of them. And he was like, all right. And this is like, to be clear, this is like 3 or 4 days before the tournament. We've been working for like a month more or less.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, I've got the perfect deck for you. And so he was like, he gave me ADP. He was like, you're going to win or lose in 3 turns and it's going to be fast and it's a good deck. And I was like, okay, cool. Perfect. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up with ADP. It wasn't what we intended to play. I probably should have played Colossal, especially knowing my bracket was all fighting week decks, but yeah, it ended up being ADP.
Okay. Yeah, one thing that I thought,
cool.
yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, ADP is cool. It's, for me, I always say it's the best deck for people that are new to the game. If they want to see some success while also sort of learn the fundamentals, ADP is by far the best deck to do that. I was surprised. I mean, there weren't a lot of players, but I was surprised there weren't really any welder decks, right, in the tournament? No fire. It was all.
I think Marcus was playing one from Germany.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed there was. I might have been just top 8. But there was a lot of E-Turn, Pikarom, and ADP, which makes sense. I think a lot of us can agree that those are 3 of some of the strongest decks in the game right now. From your experience in the tournament, Wolf, what do you think the best deck is, or at least in that tournament?
I only played against Pikarom and Eternatus, and I couldn't even watch the rest of the tournament because I was playing in the other tournament, so I don't really feel qualified to answer.
Okay.
But I mean, like, all TCG decks have the same problem, right? Which is, like, if you dead draw, you lose.
Yes.
And that's why I quit playing TCG. Like, oh, great. Like, I don't even get to play the game. That's not very fun. So, like, we have luck in VGC, but you always get to play the game, you know?
Right.
There's no, like, it's, like, unless someone needs, like, Scarf, Rotom Frost, Abomasnow, and Blizzard double freezes you, which even then there's counterplay to. Like, you're always playing the game, and, like, the feeling of just, like, drawing nothing or, like, no supporters, no draw, like, sitting there doing nothing is, like, so incredibly frustrating because like it doesn't really feel like there's anything like that's you can do about it. Which again is why I stopped playing. Why like the thing I hated most about TCG. So if there's a deck where you don't dead draw, where you don't where you can at least play the game to begin, then that's the best deck in the format. But to my knowledge, nothing like that exists and can also keep up with the rest of the format, because games are over in 3 turns, right? So if you miss turn 1,
no, you're pretty.
Some games are over in 3 turns. I mean, I'd
right.
say games are over in like 3 to 5 turns at maximum. But
like if you miss turn 1, you've lost 20% of your.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And if you look at it from that, like a lot of people in Pokemon don't even try to plan their games by the amount of turns that they think they can. They come up with these elaborate plans, and sometimes you can go down like sneak through a crack, and you're like, cool, I reset stamped my opponent into nothing, or I'm gonna play Marnie and my opponent has nothing in their hand, or I'm gonna hope. Or I'm going to play this crushing hammer card and just rip off their energies and then come up with these elaborate game plans. But I mean, you need to like, Pokemon is very much a sandbox game. It's the Apple versus PC discussion of you have a set amount of time, a finite amount of time, come up with a game plan in that finite amount of time. But I agree with you. Like as a TCG player, we actually had our Chill TCG that Maddy runs $3,000 tournament with GG Tour. So like I'm super thankful as like a player that people like Maddy exist, because they're still pushing our community. And I mean, I don't think $3,000 is a poor prize pool at all. I think for like $5 to $10 entry, I think that those types of tournaments are great. I played in League Cups and stuff like that, and I paid way more than that for way less than that.
But regional, right? At least for us, like you pay $70 for regional and get like $1,000 for first. Like
exactly. It makes it so much more difficult to justify playing a plane trip. But for me, like I kind of I made day 2 at that event. So just to give you like kind of backstory, so I went 7-1-1 in Swiss. So I was placed 4th, going to the top 32 next day events. Maddie's like watching me play here and there, jumping in and out, talking. And I'm like, yep, cool. So I dead drew both games. Cool. I hit an auto loss matchup. Because that's like that, for example, like your cold deck, if you just hit a Pikarom or an E-turn, you're smoking your opponent. Like they can have the best hand in the world, you're just smoking them. Sometimes type advantage. Now, like in VGC, like you said that like luck's not really a factor. Like, is there something where you just bring like the correct Pokemon? Like, is your opponent wearing like the wrong colors that day? Like, is there anything like that happens that's so like overpowering like that? Like, have you ever gone against a team and you're like,
it's a little bit different, right? Because in VGC, don't you have like a party of 6 and then you choose 4 to go in?
Exactly.
And you can see your opponent's team.
Exactly. So you know what you're going up against beforehand. And there's definitely like there's luck in VGC. Like you can lose games to luck for sure. However, you get to start playing. Like you always get to play the game, or at least most of the time, right? There's no situation where there's no equivalent for dead drawing.
The starting points are equal most of the time.
Exactly. Most players will always start with 4 Pokemon. There's nothing you can really do about that,
right?
At all. You'll always start with 4 Pokemon no matter what. And I mean, there's definitely like aspects of luck that are. Like there's luck in the game. There's random crit chance. There's moves that can miss. There's secondary effects. There's a whole bunch of variable probabilities. But the secret is that good players are able to mitigate that, or maybe not even good, but the best players can mitigate those chances and give themselves the best odds of winning. And play in such a way that like oftentimes the luck either doesn't matter or like it doesn't happen in the first place. Like for example, you can't get critical hit if you knock out your opponent's Pokemon first, right? Critical hit is a 1 in 24 chance. So you might think, oh, I lose the game with the crit here, but if you knock them out first, they don't get to attack, therefore no crit. So taking that example on a more general scale, there's ways of playing around luck. And I think a lot of mid to good players don't have those fundamentals and don't think about the game that way, and they blame luck when they lose, which I recognize maybe like when I was working with Tord, who's someone who's like incredibly consistent, right? As we talked about. Yeah. So maybe I recognize that my inability to see how to play around these rough starts or how I got into the rough starts in the first place is probably indicative of my skill level, right? I'm not saying that like
that's no. I think that's a completely fair like response. Like Tord is arguably one of the most consistent players that we have out of any player. He has the most international championships, top 8 or hires, or like international like placements. Right. So I mean, for sure, it's definitely something that even I myself can look up to and be like, how is Tord doing this? Because like there's either 2 arguments, and I mean this is not a witch hunt or anything like this. Is Tord Reklev as good as he is, or is there something wrong with his gameplay that allows him to win? And I mean, I think Tord's been on stream enough at this point. And I've played against Tor where there's virtually no issues with his play. So Tor just has to be good at this point. So how is Tor continuously winning these international championships? Like, I played against Australia, the last in real life event that I played in. I played against Tor in the top 8 of Australia. I mean, it's one of those things, like, he's always there, man. So how is he always there? Because, like, we all agree here that TCG can be riddled with luck and variance at times. And I mean, I find myself closer to the top most of the time, but there's definitely some tournaments that I bomb. I don't know, maybe it's a just kind of like general idea of like to relook at things the same way that you said you could prevent crits by attacking first. Maybe there's ways that you can kind of make your deck a little bit more soft around the edges to have better starts. Like you said, for anyone who's listening here at all who's playing TCG, I think maybe looking at the game different, reinventing the way that if your deck's dead drawing, maybe like write down why it's dead drawing and then come up for a reason, starting with some more different basic Pokemon, starting with adding some more support cards to your deck, maybe taking out some of those tech slots, because at the end of the day, a game that you're playing in Pokemon is probably a game that you have a higher chance of winning, because if your deck's just dead drawing, you're probably not winning.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's one factor that, I mean, of course, Zach, you are a competitive player, so I would like your opinion. But one thing that I want to bring up is with Pokemon, there's like two sides to the skill gap. One is, of course, being a good player, right, and knowing your matchups, knowing how to play your deck. But another one is building and choosing the right deck for the format, for the meta.
Yeah.
And I know, like, obviously in VGC, like, it's similar. You choose, a team that you think is gonna right. So I don't know. Would you say? To me, it feels to me like choosing the right deck for a TCG tournament is a bit more has a bit more weight to it than choosing perhaps like the absolutely correct 6 Pokemon in a VGC tournament. So like I don't.
You're saying like you're saying if I chose, so you're saying the deck choice. So like just summarize. You're saying the deck choice for a TCG player probably holds more weights because we have a singleton deck, no sideboard, no nothing, compared to the 6 Pokemon a VGC player would bring to a tournament.
Right. Like, I think Wolf can pick, like, I think he could pick a wide variety of Pokemon and still see see a lot of success in these VGC tournaments. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But if this was TCG, like, if you really probably only have like 5 or 6 decks to choose from in total, or else you're most likely not going to get a super good placement, at least in this meta.
Sure.
What would you say to that, Wolf? Is there like a very small amount of Pokemon that you think you really need to bring?
If you bring a bad team to a VGC tournament, you either have to be so much better than your opponents that you have to like really do a lot of work and really fight tooth and nail, or you're done for. It's very difficult to win a game of Pokemon when your Pokemon are worse than your opponent's Pokemon. And I say this as someone who has brought bad teams to events and done well with them, like because for a while I was building really bad teams. Like, I have results with absolutely atrocious garbage teams, and it's incredibly difficult. Like, you have to basically be outplaying your opponent on a turn-by-turn basis and on an overall basis. So you have to control the pace of the game, and you have to control, like, get the individual turns right, all the while you have less tools, less resources, and really less like everything than your opponent. And you're just playing either with information that you have surprise factor, or you're playing with just like superior game ability. And it's not consistent, it's not fun, and it's very, very difficult. Right. It's kind of fun, but it's really difficult.
Right.
It's not your back.
I guess my main question would be like, so how big would you say the pool is of really viable Pokemon for VGC?
It doesn't really make sense in the same sense, because you have a deck that's like, this is my Colossal deck, this is my Pikarom deck, right? Like, we have a team of 6, so like even like, and each of those 6 Pokemon, it's not like they always have the same 2 attacks and the same ability, right? Like you have the EVs matter, the items matter, like the 4 moves you choose are very important, and the difference between like Flare, Blitz, or Taunt on your Incineroar can mean you lose to Ferrothorn automatically, or you don't, right? And so I don't really think there's a good comparison. I would say that most Pokemon outside of the meta, typically, like, you need a good reason to use them, and people who use them typically don't do well. But you, like, in theory, like, people could bring them. But the other thing is that, like, in a lot of times, it's harder to counter the metagame with these more unorthodox Pokemon, because like you have like a set number of decks you can run into, but I don't know how large that is, but I have a feeling that the set number of archetypes in VGC are like kind of larger, right? Like even right now we have Sun, Rain, you have multiple Trick Room modes.
Right.
You have like different like main threats, like main pairs, like Torkoal Venusaur, Zapdos, Grimmsnarl, P2 Metagross, like Spectre, Metagross. There's like I could go on for like probably 20 minutes.
And that was
I'd say for us, like we got maybe like in the entire game of Pokemon, I'd say we have anywhere between 20 or 30 decks that have existed in our current standard format. So in any capacity, like sure, like we as much as our Pokemon don't have different move sets or anything like that, Maddy, for example, might build his Orbeetle VMAX differently than Joe down the streets.
Yeah.
And they both bring it to a tournament. I mean, it's like a tier 2, tier 3 deck, and I mean, Maddy might flip me off about that. I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right. I love the deck, but it's not.
It's just one of those things where like there's slight variations to our decks, but those are really the techs that we bring to it. So like I played an Eternatus deck with hammers this weekend, but maybe next week I'm going to play Eternatus with bead. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's still core Eternatus. So I mean, I guess that makes sense that like the variations of the Pokemon that you have, that there's probably like it's a finite metagame, but it's hard to define. If that makes sense.
I'm not even sure it's finite. Like honestly, like if you think about every possible combination of four moves and EV distribution, which is 508, which not actually 508, but like these different points that go into 6 stats, right? And it's not like they're inconsequential. Like sure, your special attack stat doesn't matter on a physical attacker, but your Incineroar being 0 speed IV versus 31 speed of IV versus max speed, or Amoonguss, for example, is a better example. Where like if it's faster than your Pokemon and has Tailwind, it could spore you, right? And it's actually at speed like a ton of your Pokemon. Whereas if it's min speed, it's better in Trick Room. Like all of these decisions impact how Pokemon is played, and like it's not rare for one of these micro decisions to impact literally the way that a game plays or turns out, or how a matchup is determined. Like the especially speed order of Pokemon, you versus your opponents, like makes a big deal. So yeah, it's like. I don't think
I get where you're coming. I think I understand. Like I think in my TCG mind, I think I can understand. I mean, I've only played in like one VGC event, and that's because back in the day when you were playing in the TCG regionals, one day I got slightly hungover as soon as I became of age, and then showed up to the VGC regionals the next day with some rain dance team. I did pretty well that event. It's one of those things where like I think I went 5-1 or something like that. It didn't do too well after that, but it's one of those things where I mean, I feel like Rain Dance carried me, and I just understood what was going on. I very much just attacked and attacked and attacked and attacked. It's not the greatest whatever, but I don't know. It's one of those crazy things. So do you feel like in VGC that they can you discover things? Like I know that you guys have started Players Cup for a couple weeks now. For us in TCG, we're in the event of we have a limited card pool. We can't change the attributes of our cards unless Pokemon issues an errata or anything like that, which just does not happen in our game, really. They issued an errata recently on like a theme deck card for no reason, just to keep it to Japan. Like it was kind of like a gigantic meme out of nowhere. It'd be like if they were like, I don't even know what Pokemon they could ever do in. Yeah, sure. Whatever it would. It was even worse than that, probably. Like I'm talking about a card that no one ever ever played.
No one will
They just added an extra retreat cost and just shot it behind the shed. Like pow.
They did.
No, but like we're kind of in a metagame where our metagame has been the same since about August. They added Vivid Volt, like they add our sets every quarter, whatever, and got really no new decks in Vivid Voltage. We got Colossal VMAX. Colossal VMAX, like I know you were talking about it. I kind of brought it back for like a little bit at some point, and then it just fizzled right back down in tier 3 because there's enough decks that find ways to counter it. Is VGC kind of the same way where you got like, have you discovered any new strategies since Players Cup 2 as you approach Players Cup 3?
So the short answer is no, but the longer answer is because I haven't been playing. But yeah, we don't have anything like that in VGC. Even our most centralized metagames typically get cracked and completely turned on their head at some point, including the one that I won Worlds in, which was our most centralized metagame ever. And I won with like an anti-meta deck that countered that that central thing. So yeah, because we have so many different customization options, like if the metagame ever becomes too standardized, then there's strong incentive for like players to counter it, and then they can do well in tournaments with that counter. And then because it's new counters in the format, either the standard thing has to adapt or new things have to rise to beat both of them. So yeah, we don't have anything like that where like there will be periods of like, oh, we think that this is really strong right now. Like there's always things going in and out of fashion, but
Sure.
for something actually for since August would be if the VGC format didn't change for a month, I'd be shocked. Like, or if what people were using didn't change for a month, like there's like it feels like every week there's like something new. Like Thunderous Urshifu was something that popped up out of nowhere. Spectre we all thought was bad and then spiked. Yeah, like Trickroom Glastrier was like really popular and is now fallen off. Like, I mean, it's still kind of there, but yeah. Metagross was really popular and now it's gone. Feeny was like disappearing in the Players Cup too. So like, yeah, there's a whole. It's always changing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like an interesting contrast because like, you know, like Zach said, we get new sets in Pokemon quarterly, and they're not always great. So like, Vivid Voltage came out, you know, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago now? 3 months. And it obviously wasn't like the best set we've gotten. The last two before that were very meta defining sets where a lot of the cards were very important to the standard format. Vivid Voltage wasn't so much the case, but like I said, to that point, the TCG meta really shifts typically pretty drastically every 3 months or so when the new set comes out. And with Pokemon, like in VGC and in the video games, they'll release a new Pokemon game or a new generation of Pokemon every 2 years, right? Or 2 or 3?
3 years. But our rules change. In the past, it was every year. Now it's every 2 months. So we have a new rule set every 2 months.
Oh, okay.
Now
That
wasn't always.
And also, like, you guys got Maddy and I
DLC.
probably look at it to be like the DLC looks really fun to play, guys, and you guys are probably like, "Whoa, what are these Galarian birds doing out here? What is this new Pokemon that you guys probably know all the new Pokemons?" For me, like, I think I was watching one of your videos. I mean, I'm pretty casual at VGC, don't know much about it, but I'm like, cool. I look at the thumbnails, all this stuff. I'm like, Spectre, what is that dude? We don't got that dude in the TCG.
Right.
What is that? Is this a Galarian Rapidash evolution? Is this one of those? Some of these Pokemon are weird, right? Like,
they go off the rails.
Audino and Indeedee look exactly the same
I
to
agree.
me.
Same thing. They look identical. They're not related.
I know. It's
Right?
so
Like,
much.
excuse me? Like, this is twins being separated from their mother at birth. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
As if it's not Galarian Audino. Come on. Like,
Yeah, I know. I was surprised.
It's
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like to that point, although with the video game for Sword and Shield, it was cool because they did do the DLCs, right? So they released, in each DLC they released older Pokemon that weren't previously found like in the Galar region for the Sword and Shield games, and which is cool, right? Does that sort of mix up the sort of VGC meta, right?
Yeah, for sure. Whenever if you had a Pokemon in, if the Pokemon is decent or good, it will change things significantly. Like there was a format shift where all they added was like some old starters, and it changed things like pretty drastically. Like they just had an Incineroar basically, and the format changed like pretty dramatically. Incineroar and Primarina. So yeah, whenever you add something in, as long as it's not awful, it will typically like have waves.
Is this the first time they've done that with video games? I don't know if they've. I mean, it's the first time they've done DLC. Have they incrementally increased or changed the variety of Pokemon throughout the life cycle of a game?
It's the first time in terms of the game that they've added new Pokemon in, because in previous games you just could get everything pretty much from the get-go. Like sometimes you would need to wait for, what was it, Poke Transfer?
Yeah.
Pokebank?
Pokebank,
Is that what it was?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, other than that, like this is the first time they've like added more into the game itself, because it's the first time that they haven't already had everything. But yeah, and it's also, since we're doing incrementing rule sets, it's also like, yeah, interesting there. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Like, even for us, like, it's weird because like I remember back in a time like in the mid to early 2010s when Pokemon would release promo cards. Like, you go to Walmart, you check out, get the blisters. There was like a Toxicroak G promo. I remember like it was that was meta defining back then for weekends. So for us, like, yeah, our meta used to be like defined off of promos. Now our promos are just reprints of cards that we get. So it's really good to like join Pokemon. So if you want to pick up that ADP Zacian deck, by the way, you can go to your local Walmart, pick up a couple Zacian tins, pick up the ADP League Battle decks, and rock out with like, I don't know, maybe $60, and you got a tier 1 deck.
That's funny.
Like, it's crazy. Like, it's maybe the Walmart special. Like, you could join Pokemon the night before regionals, go to a Walmart, and then just pick up your deck.
Yeah.
And you could do that for a lot of the top tier decks. The Pika Rom deck has that.
Yep.
The Eternatus VMAX deck has that.
Reshizard as well has
yeah, I think it's crazy, but I don't know. Hopefully we see some changes to our TCG coming up soon. To anyone who's watching this, I know it doesn't apply really to Wolf, but it's one of those things where Shining Fates, our next set in February, adds 10 new cards to our game. It's a reprint set. So that's cool. But in March, we got Battle Styles that Maddy and I both covered on our channels. So, I mean, check that out. I mean, it doesn't necessarily change too much. It adds Urshifu into our game. So, I mean, we're way behind on the time. This guy's had Urshifu for like months now.
Yeah, Urshifu's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's a very cool Pokemon. The cards
It's
look
interesting in
very
the
strong.
TCG.
Yeah.
They're very hit or miss. I don't know how it's gonna. It might take us a while to crack that code, but I guess like one of the biggest things that I want to ask you, like, coming from the other Players Cup champion, and not to call you like the other one, I mean, both of us were able to win our respective games. How did you approach the Players Cup? I mean, I don't want you to be like, I tested this specific team or anything like that, but I mean more of like the underlying strategy that anyone can apply to a competitive game. What type of mindset and strategic value did you like put into that events?
I think I did a really good job of like picking good teams for the events. For example, it's a 3-part tournament, right? So the first part, I like didn't want to build a new team, so I used an old team to kind of like brute force my way through. And then the regional bracket was interesting. It was just after the DLC had released, and I had a couple options in terms of teams that I could choose or like what I wanted to build around. But I said, you know what, this is a new format. Everyone's going to be all over the place. There's not going to be any standardization. I want to use, I don't care what I use. I want it to be 6 Pokemon that are good Pokemon. I want to use 6 good Pokemon, good stats, good abilities, good moves, good typing, whatever. Because that way I'll have tools that can help me deal with some of these things rather than going all in on a specific call and finding out mid-tournament that sucks.
You're going to like play adaptively, right? Like
exactly. Yeah. So I picked Pokemon that were strong, had good synergy with each other, and worked like I thought were good picks for the tournament, and I made it through with that. I won almost all my games. I dropped into the losers bracket in the penultimate round, and then I had to win one in the losers bracket from there. But yeah, and then for the finals, I said, you know what? I want something aggressive. I want something fast. I looked at I looked at the metagame. I looked at things that I thought could be strong. I thought rock types could be strong, for example. I looked at a couple things, but really I said, I want something aggressive. I want something that puts pressure on the opponent. And I want something ideally that's underrated and maybe has like a bit of surprise factor. Because the other thing is that we're playing with open. You guys played with open team sheets or open deck lists, I assume, because we had and that makes a big
anything
deal.
Online you have to, because I mean at that point anyone can just swap in between. I mean, I don't recommend anyone to swap in between, but
yeah, right. It's like
there's got to be someone who's bound to do it. Like it's gonna just happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I wanted with open team sheets, like you don't have the element of surprise. So I wanted something that was strong, consistent, and like more of its surprise factor came from inexperience playing against it. And I ended up just settling on something that I'd used before, which was Colossal. I'd had success with Colossal before, and I built a new team around it, and yeah, it felt really good. So yeah, I think it was really like I picked something that I knew was strong, had a really strong secondary effect, and then also offered the offensive pressure. And I was able to manipulate the way that my opponents played against Colossal, if that makes sense, because most people who use this strategy of Colossal use it in an extremely linear, one-dimensional way. In that, like the Colossal Dragon Bolt, they surf and then they go from there. And I was able to play it in a much more flexible, much like kind of hit and run, kind of bait and switch style. And so I abused the fact that most people weren't used to playing against like a quote unquote good Colossal player, right? Because most people who tried it, like just threw it on their team, tried it, always did the same thing and lost with it. So they stopped using it. So yeah, I basically like used my experience in the matchup and the fact that I would have more matchup experience than my opponents on the strategy that's really devastating if you let it get going. And yeah, I went from there. So yeah, I think that's it.
Cool.
So basically, to kind of summarize it from what I understand, is that you always so in order to qualify, you went with something that you were comfortable with, something that you knew. So I mean, in TCG, if you're playing that, if you're that Pika Rom player, considering Pika Rom's a tier 1 deck right now, there's probably no reason to reinvent the wheel while you're trying to just grind out these 50 event keys. It's probably a good idea. So if you're the Eternatus dude, play the Eternatus. If you're the ADP girl, play the ADP deck. Whoever you are, play the deck that's your deck. Maybe shift it up if things aren't working. Because we have to, ours is basically 50 separate events, so we could play 50 separate decks or 50 of the same deck, whatever in any capacity.
That's the Wi-Fi tournament, right?
So for us, ours is just on PTC. That's for the first step.
Yeah,
and then once if you make it into the top X quals, so the way that you kind of went that is you went with something that had options. You gave yourself opportunities to kind of sneak out of games, which seems good. And I mean, in the final, you kind of would you say redefine something that was already existing?
Yeah, but I would say that a lot of these choices I made were based on things specific to the VGC timeline, not necessarily the VGC as a game, but like I chose Pokemon that were consistent and were like gave me options because it was an open for like it was a format where I expected a lot of variants, a lot of weird Pokemon, a lot of weird decks, I guess.
Right, with the new
because
DLC.
Yeah. Right, exactly, because it was right after the DLC drop, so people were still figuring things out. So I may have made a different choice if if it was like a much more standard established metagame. So I wouldn't say like always do this, always do that. You know, it was just that's just what I happened to do because I looked at the landscape and chose that this is the way I want to approach this.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's the same thing that happened for us too.
Last player
with Vivid.
Yep. I agree.
It was one of those things. It was crazy.
I think now because Shining Fates will come out during this Players Cup, right? So I'm not sure exactly how long for the TCG our Players Cup lasts. I don't know if it'll go into March and then Battle Styles will come out, maybe for the last few rounds.
So, from what I understand, is our timeline is we currently have our current Team Up to Vivid Voltage formats. Shining Fates gets released partway through that and should be playable. I'm saying should be asterisk because I'm not sure, but from based off the timeline that I'm looking at, I say that it should be playable for the past few weeks. Kind of like how for our Players Cup 2, we had Champions Path legal for a couple weeks. That Champions Path also didn't really change our metagame. I don't think this set's going to really change the metagame. Maybe add a few niche plays, maybe add that flavor deck of the week, and then once we hit into our Players Cup Global Finals for the PC3, I think that's really where it's going to... that's when Battle Styles gets released.
Yeah, right.
So... Wolf, let me ask you this. After playing in the TCG, I know you said you played the TCG before. Are there any strategies that you kind of learned from Tord that you could bring going forward into your PC3 run? Is there anything that like he passed on to you as one of the greatest minds in competitive games or a competitive game that you can kind of take? Or is there any like practices that you were like, you want to know what? I'm going to pick that up. That sounds really good.
The short answer is no, I think, but we had 3 sessions together. So
sure.
Yeah, there were the thing, most of the thing was the things that like I was like, oh, this is, he would tell me something, I'd be like, that's something that I have in VGC, right? He'd say no crushing hammers, I'd say no moves below 75% accuracy, right? No moves below 80 accuracy.
Right.
Stuff like that, like minimizing variance and that kind of thing. But a lot of his coaching was specific to TCG, like this is what you do, this is why, or like this is the way your deck generally works. And so I think if we'd taken more time, I certainly would have been able to take things. But since we were kind of, and it was also 3 different decks, so part of the sessions were like learning each of the new decks.
Right, you gotta learn
like you gotta learn the game to play the game. And so, but I'm sure if we spent more time, I could have. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been taking TFT pretty seriously, which is like kind of my main competitive focus right now.
Sure.
And I know that there's like Pokemon is teaching me things about TFT, and TFT is also teaching me things about Pokemon. So I'm sure that if I took TCG, like if I really sat down and played a bunch of TCG, I could definitely like learn some things that would help improve my VGC run.
Awesome, man.
That seems completely fair. I mean, for me, sometimes like whenever I'm stuck or I just need to clear my mind, like I've prepared for events by playing like games like Tetris, playing chess, things that just like make my brain work a little bit different, right? Like I think most players probably have Smash on their Switch. I'll play Smash with some friends. Like I know Pokemon's a turn-based game, but I mean I think there's different elements and things that you might like try that could unlock different things. So I mean I guess for me, I want to know, do you feel like TCG, what did you feel? Did you like it? Was it something that like, I mean, in a way, like I feel like it was disappointing because our game is so like decided by 3 turns, or it's so like top heavy that it could just tip over. What are your thoughts coming into it? Like, are you like, do you see yourself playing at a TCG tournament in the future?
I would play in a TCG tournament if like it was possible, right? Like if I could do both TCG and VGC at a weekend, but I kind of hate it, honestly. Like the feeling of dead drawing is just like so incredibly frustrating, and I don't know. I think I'm also incentivized to like not like it as much because I switched to VGC, right? And I think also I started playing when I was so young. I think a lot of my bad habits have carried over, like into playing now. Like I think I probably never like worked to undo those. Like the game, like there's definitely elements that are fun, but I think kind of the really fast paced games and in some ways the lack of agency, like where, for example, the reason I didn't advance from the tournament was because I had a horrible game, realized I had an out. I had a Mawile, I had one energy left in the deck, I had or like an energy switch or something, and I had a Metal Saucer, and I had everything in hand. Opponent reset stamps me. I draw into what did I even draw
Stamp,
into? So,
bro. Stamp. That card should be banned. Like, I'm not trying to. I mean, I don't know if Zach thinks so. I personally, like, I hate that card. I just feel like you get rewarded for losing, and it's just.
Yeah. It's a comeback mechanic. But yeah, I drew two cards. I drew Juniper or something, like some card that would let me get more cards.
Yeah,
research, and I drew my only Metal Saucer left in the deck, and it was like
no.
I could have and the thing, I felt really proud of myself because the end game was play my only Mawile, use Mawile to bench one of the cards in hand, and then I had Boss. Like I would have drawn, or it wasn't research. I don't remember how, but I had some way of getting more cards.
It was Dedenne, I believe, right? I think if I watched the stream,
my bench was full, so that's what I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was Dedenne. I think it might have been Dedenne. Yeah. So like I basically had a way of all I needed to do was not draw my only Metal Saucer, and I would have been fine. And I drew 2 cards, and one of them was Metal Saucer, and I was like, well,
I mean, them's the beats. That's it hits the fan sometimes in TCG like that, and you're like, this card's so amazing, just not right now.
Right.
Yeah. Like because I was forced to discard it, and then I couldn't get my energy going. So,
and there,
Yeah,
there are outs to that scenario. Like you could.
I could have put that earlier.
You could have Oranguru on your bench, right? You could have put that back in your deck, drew another card. But it's one of those things where there's so many different cards for so many different scenarios that like you can't expect that to happen, and it's purely unfortunate. And stuff like that.
To be clear, I'm sure I could have played better. Like I'm not blaming TCG as a game. Like I'm sure that if I was a better player, I wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place, right? But yeah, I think that like the fun isn't worth the frustration. I feels like it comes up relatively often in TCG, comparatively to other games. Like
the salt is real, man. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't super salty. Like I understood that this is part of the game, but like, I don't. Yeah, and it's like there's not very much room for error because again, the games are so short, right?
Right.
That you have one bad turn, and it's like not that you lose the game from one bad turn, but it definitely felt like you were behind, or like the opponent just hits everything and you hit nothing. There's like a lot of variance, and you can't like in VGC, like you can kind of control the options your opponent has, but in TCG, like they have a good hand, like. Unless you like want to Marnie or reset stamp them, which you can't do all the time, you have no way of knowing if they have everything, then you just like it's like it feels like the variance is double because not only like can you do poorly, your opponent can do exceptionally well, right?
Yes.
But I get why people love the game. Like it's definitely fun. It's just I think it's just not my kind of game because I don't like not feeling in control of my fate, and TCG makes me feel like I'm not in control of my fate.
I hear you. I always make the comparison where like in TCG like you play your deck more so like against your own deck than you do your opponent for the most part. Like you're always going to play the goal is to play the correct cards that you have, right? But you're not always going to draw the correct cards, and you're not always in control. You're always really just trying to ride that wave correctly and hope that the wave is the correct one. Where to me, from a little experience, but as a viewer, I feel like in VGC you're very much so playing your opponent, right? It's very much a more of a one-on-one like intimate experience. Whereas when you're playing the TCG, you're playing against your deck and you hope that it doesn't fight back. And I know what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good analogy, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I don't know. I can.
Yeah, Maddy, you said you.
Yeah. Okay.
You said you had a question. Yeah, you said you had a question from content creation focus. So I know we were talking a little bit before this. Maddy and I both kind of we're pandemic version like YouTubers now, where we both kind of started off. I mean, I've created content in the past for some bigger YouTubers and stuff like that. I mean, you obviously have a large following. Where did you start with that?
It was right before I won Worlds, actually, in 2016.
Okay.
I was in college, and my friend Aaron Zhang, who is one of my best friends, he started making content, I think, in 2014. I'd been watching him do it for a while, and I talked to him. I was like, "Hey, dude, like this seems kind of interesting, but like I don't think I'd be very good at it." And he was like, "No, dude, I think you'd be really good." And so I was like, "Well, that's all the push I needed." But for many years, it was like it's just like been a hobby of mine. Like I would post once a week, maybe. For many, many years, like pretty much since 2016. And like there were periods where that was more. There were also periods where it was like once a month, but I just kind of made whatever, and it was just like for fun. I just did what I wanted. But yeah, with Sword and Shield, I decided to take it a bit more seriously. So I started doing daily uploads. I started, just being more, much more involved with it, and yeah, kind of it's grown from there. So not this past November, but the one before, I think I had 60,000, and now we're close to 300,000. So I've been very, very lucky in terms of growth, and in terms of like Sword and Shield's been good for me for sure.
Yeah, I remember, and I know it's been pretty rapid, but just I feel like for most people that do like get good success like that on YouTube with content creation, it does kind of happen like all at once. It's like kind of a big rush, like a big wave.
For sure.
I remember like watching your stuff like a long time ago, back when you were closer to like that 50,000 or maybe even less range. And I remember tuning back in recently, because that's kind of how I do with YouTube, right? Is like I watch some people for a while, and then I like watch some other people, and I always come back, and then I was like, oh wow, like it's, he's been doing very well. I guess, and there's probably, Wolf, a lot of people watching that also aspire to be content creators, or people who are doing it right now. Do you have any tips for people, maybe not specific to VGC content, but just content in general? What kind of tips would you give to people who are looking to make content or grow a channel?
If I could give you only one like tip, and then it would be this thing would end, I would say look at the people who are doing well and emulate them.
Yeah.
And especially look outside the community that you're currently in. In my opinion. So my biggest strength, I think, is my analysis in general. I'm really good at strategy. I'm really good at analysis. And so in Pokemon YouTube, not even VGC, but general Pokemon YouTube, everyone tends to copy each other. Like one person, people like, I'm at the point where people copy me now, which is funny. Because I definitely was not that way for a while. But yeah, like one person does something and then everyone does something. We're seeing this right now with like pack openings, right? Where like there's so many people doing pack openings right now, and like I feel like a lot of people are just doing it because like other people are doing it.
Yes.
And then maybe it looks fun, and like I'm not if you do pack openings, like that's your business. Like I don't, it doesn't bother me. Like do you but like that content doesn't even necessarily do well, and like there's so many people doing it that it oversaturates like the viewer base, right? And so I never did pack openings because I was like, I don't get it, and that doesn't look fun, and I don't shiny hunt because I don't get it, and it doesn't look fun to me, right? It's not what I'm interested in.
I agree with that as well. I can't shiny
right. And so, and if you watch or like that content, that's totally fine. It's just not for me, so I'm not going to do it, right? However, what I do is I look at what are people outside of Pokemon doing, and what are they doing well, and I look to emulate that, right? And so a lot of times that's going to require some translation, right? In terms of like, they're playing something that isn't Pokemon, or they're doing something that isn't a video game. And how do I take that and kind of distill the essence of that and put that into like kind of translate that and put it into just like a place where I can use it. And that's difficult for sure. But I think that's the main thing. And the other thing that you have to understand is that doing well in content creation is not entirely about your content. It's only about probably 50% your content, right? Because it doesn't matter if like, let's say I have a friend named Bob, and Bob wants to be a content creator, and Bob, met a genie, and he said, I want to make the best content in the world, right? It doesn't matter, right? Because if nobody clicks on Bob's video, no one's going to realize that his content is good. So you have to pay a lot of attention to the marketing of your videos, which on YouTube is title, thumbnail, and concept. I'll include concept as separate than title. And that is extraordinarily important because, like, if I were a beginning content creator, like, of course, like, you have to focus on your content itself, but you also should be spending a large amount of time thinking about how you're going to market it. Because if you make a great video, it doesn't matter. You spend 40 hours on a video. I don't do that. But if you spend 40 hours on a video and 30 minutes into the title and thumbnail, people aren't good. Like, if nobody watches it, not that you wasted the time, but you're not, if you're going to spend time on a video anyway, you should also spend time thinking about how you're going to market it. Right. So yeah, I think those are the two biggest things, but it's difficult. And I think once you have some audience, it's easier once you kind of have that first base. And I was lucky because I started out with a base. I got some, like, Aaron obviously helped promote my channel as well in the beginning, but also I had an established, like, I am a good competitive player. I was still one of the best even before I won Worlds. And so I had people, and I have like a Twitter following, so it was easier in that regard. So yeah. Oh, and the last thing is that if you have some kind of niche or strength, like, lean into that, right? Like, if you want a tournament, like, you can put that in the title, right, or in the thumbnail, right? Or if you're really good at, like, you can use hyperbole, right? Like, you can be like it doesn't matter if it's true at a certain point, because, like, especially with subjective things, like, if you want to say, like, best TCG player, or like professional gamer or whatever, like, I don't know, like, stuff like that. Like, I guess what I'm saying is feel free to experiment and see what sticks, and then go with that, right? And never be afraid to innovate. Never get complacent, because so many channels, like actually my channel was kind of stagnating, and so I've just made a big change to it as well. But yeah, like I just like doing the same thing over and over. If it isn't working, time for a change. Yep. Not that you have to jump ship right away, but once you've seen enough to say like, okay, I need to make a change, don't be afraid to do that, because if you're stagnating anyway, you don't have anything to lose. But that's more for like once you've already been doing stuff and you get stuck, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think for Pokemon TCG, sort of the YouTube like content creation world is very much yet to be cracked. We do have a few people that that do very well and that are very popular, but for the most part, the massive majority of content for Pokemon TCG are just deck analysis. People are like, here's the deck, here's how it works. Maybe let's play a game or two, but and there's not that many decks in the game, right? So like it's a lot of the same type of content throughout. And you definitely, your point on sort of like trying to do your like have your own niche like type of thing while keeping it also relevant to the product, I suppose, which would be the content. Then yeah, I think that's definitely for people who are watching looking to get into Pokemon TCG content. That's, I think, definitely your best best bet.
And you can always ask yourself questions, right? Like, what if I were watching, what would make me as a TCG player want to watch this TCG content, right? Assuming there's enough, because I know there's like a fair few TCG players. Like I know my understanding is that there's like more TCG players than VGC players, right? Like, but the viewership is lower, and so why is that, right?
Exactly. I'd say competitive wise, I think there's more VGC players overall on a casual level.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know too many people who like super casually just bought a theme deck at Walmart and played a theme deck, whereas I know every single one of my friends has Sword and Shield for the most part, and they just like play. They might collect Pokemon, whatever. So I mean,
right? That's why
I totally got it.
Yeah, that's why you see the channels of these people opening cards have millions of subscribers, but the
actual players, not so much.
Yeah, right. The competitive players, like you might see, have like 50, or 60,000 subscribers at the most.
Yeah, because
really.
I think like when Mahone right now is what I think Mahone's
60?
are
Mahone's definitely the
I think
most.
is around 60.
Mahone is definitely at the top. So I don't know if
is that
he was part of the Union Cup.
I'm not 100%. Yeah, he was part of the Union Cup. I'm not particularly knowledgeable about VGC. Are you the most for VGC?
Yeah, for a while it was Aaron, but with Sword and Shield.
Okay.
Yeah,
but you kind of popped off and stole your homeboys. It's actually crazy. Aaron, I actually knew Aaron like back in the day when he was in his TCG days.
Yeah, we both played TCG at first.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like I would talk to him like on stupid forums and stuff like this, Poke Beach forums.
Yeah,
and,
I was on Poke Beach, Poke Gym.
That's crazy.
So
and it's crazy how everything's evolved now, and everyone's here now. I would have never thought back then that he would have been a VGC player. I mean, I don't know if you would have ever thought back then that you would have been a VGC player, and now everyone's kind of set in their place for now. But I mean, I guess until the next crossover series happens, we'll see how everything goes.
Maybe it'll be run by Chill TCG. You never know.
Chill TCG. VGC players teach TCG players how to play VGC.
That would be cool, man. I'd be down for that.
That'd be very cool.
I feel like it'd be harder, to be fair. Like I don't know if it would be easier to teach, like, you know what I mean? Like in VGC you can kind of be like, hey, like here's this, very well established deck that's pretty easy to play. The concept's not too difficult. Go and try to win. Whereas VGC might be a little bit hard to teach everybody that.
The options are enticing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. So I mean, I think I think we're probably. I just feel the vibe that we're good.
I got one last thing that I just want to touch on. I'm saving it for last because it's like the one thing that I can like find relevancy with for this podcast, because of course I have two fantastic competitive players for their respective games, and then there's me. I'm just here, just trying to belong.
The orbital champion of our hearts.
That's right. But I wanted to talk about in Wolfey, like obviously I don't know if you're too familiar with sort of the online tournament scene for Pokemon TCG.
Oh yeah.
But that's kind of my role right now in the community, as somebody who plays the game, but I'm not. I'm fairly new to the game. I'm also not a fantastic player. My contribution to the TCG community right now is a tournament organizer. And we run weekly online PTCGO tournaments. We've been doing it for a while. It's what my content's based off of. And I've kind of built a little bit of a community just off that. I'm not entirely familiar at all. Like, I'm not saying that you should know about me, because I don't know much about, if at all, if there is sort of any online VGC sort of tournament organizations or series or communities that are happening right now for the VGC. Do you know? You want to give some insight?
So I believe there are things happening, but to be completely truthful, like the VGC community has become like kind of really toxic in the last year and a half, 2 years. And so it's gotten to the point where like all I personally want to do is like be left alone. So I don't interact or like play in anything anymore, just because like it's gotten pretty bad. So I think there are people doing things, but like even like there's good people running them too, but like just there's so many bad actors in the community now that I'm just trying to stay away and just trying to build as much distance as I can. I don't even like, it's funny because I grew up with this community, right? But like, you know, I've been playing since I was a kid, you know, since 2011. And yeah, like it always felt like, even when I wasn't on the best terms with everybody, it always felt like it was like my home in a way. And so it's funny kind of to lose that. But yeah, no, I think there's stuff, but
it's definitely not. Yeah. Okay.
It's switched to Twitter. And then there was like a couple bad actors. So I don't know if TCG is like mostly on Twitter as well, but it's just like not a healthy place for like, discussion.
Yes, I think Twitter, for the most part, that's the case for most communities and most subjects. Things are a little bit rough on Twitter.
It's funny because I recently started playing TFT, and they're mostly on Discord, and the people are so unbelievably nice. Like it's like the reverse of VGC. Like every person I meet is like super nice, super friendly, like super welcoming. Like I don't know, like it's so interesting, and like they're all very respectful. I saw two people get in an argument and resolve it. I was like, wait, they're not just gonna like be horrible to each other online for like the rest of time and like get their friends to harass them. Like it was crazy. Like I don't know. I was like, wow, this is quite interesting. So yeah, I think Twitter's quite bad for community development.
I 100% agree with you there. I feel like I have a block list as much as my followers list.
Yeah, I muted all VGC Twitter. Like
it's one of those things where like I've definitely been in the spotlight a few times for reasons that I may not want to be in there. And it's like, sometimes it's hurtful, man. Like when people message you telling you to go kill yourself, or when people like, I don't think I've ever been in a position in my life where I'm like, I actively want to kill myself. Have I ever said those words? Probably, yeah. I've definitely been frustrated at points, but it's one of those things where I don't want anyone to ever message anyone something that they don't want any repercussions from. Right. Like, I don't want someone to message someone and be like, go kill yourself, and that person actually goes off themselves. I might have strength that people might not have. And I mean, I think it's just competitively, like, I agree with you. Toxicity exists in all card games. I mean, even in our community, like in TCG, there was some random stuff that popped up the other day that I was like, it is fairly toxic. Twitter allows, like, I think Drake said it, where he's like, Twitter fingers turn into trigger fingers. And I mean, I think there's some stupid turf wars. Like, it's honestly so stupid. Like, get your head out of your ass. You are not any single person ever, right? Like, it's one of those things where I just don't think anyone has any right to say anything rude to anyone. Like, if someone pisses you off, just don't like that person. Don't ever like bring it to a level where whatever. Like,
that's always the biggest issue is people feel like they have to retaliate, you know?
I mean, VGC Twitter got to the point where like, I don't really want to get too far into it because like it's a negative topic. I know we're kind of closing the show. I would say that like in general, like lack of accountability is pretty horrible when people can just like lack of accountability can be okay if like people are keeping each other in check, but when you're incentivized for like saying really horrible, edgy things or like really going after people like just for the sake of it, or because like for whatever reasons because your friends don't like them, then it becomes pretty bad. And those people, even when they just even like those people are still in the community is my issue, right? The people are like, it's fine if they're in the community, but they're still doing this to other people, right? Or it's just like the way that people operate now. So yeah, it's pretty atrocious in my opinion, but that's why I'm just trying. I'm like, you know what? I'm done here. I had my time. So yeah, which is actually kind of funnily enough, one of my motivations for making content or for making educational VGC content is like, it's like twofold because I want to bring more people in so like we can offset some of this kind of vitriol, kind of this toxicity, but also like every once in a while I'll bring somebody in and they'll go and become part of the problem, and I'm like, then I have like a lot of guilt about that. I'm like, oh my god, I just made the problem worse.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know,
Oh,
it's
no.
counterproductive. So it's hard to find the balance. But
Yeah, there's always kind of.
it's good that you're running good tournaments because you seem like a good person. So I'm glad that there's I'm glad TCG isn't in the same state that VGC is.
I mean, you're always gonna have those people, right? No matter what's going on. It's online.
Yeah.
People are behind computer screens, and they're gonna feel enabled to or gonna feel capable to say things that they definitely wouldn't be saying if they were right in front of somebody. For the most part.
No, I agree.
But what was I going to touch on? Yeah, I mean, just to trail back a bit, I feel like right now for the Pokemon TCG, this since it's a physical game, and there's no real way to play the actual game right now, PTCGO is our only outlet to play, which is important that we have PTCGO. But in terms of competitive play, there's nothing integrated into the game itself, which kind of forces us to artificially create this environment, which I think is very important right now for our community. Whereas I think with VGC, if you really wanted to, you could just hop on like the ranked ladder, right, and just kind of play and try to,
See
get
how
some.
it goes.
Yeah, right. So we don't have anything like that. So I think that right now the tournament scene is much more relevant, I guess, from what I'm gathering from you than it is for VGC. But
Different people give different answers probably, but that's my answer.
Sure, for sure, man. So yeah, I mean, I was curious, right? I just wanted to touch on that. Try to.
That's fair. I mean, I think that I think now that kind of covers everything that we wanted to go over. If there's anything like last minute, I know we totally appreciate and we're gracious of all the time that you've given us today, this early morning that's now turning into an afternoon, but to me that still feels early. Do you, is there any type of shout outs, any type of anything that you want to touch on, anything
plug
that
everything,
you want to finalize?
Plug everything.
Plug away, do whatever.
Yeah,
You're
I
all
make
good.
content on YouTube and Twitch, so you can follow there, WolfeyVGC and Wolfe Glick, somehow. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
It was cool
It's
to crossover here.
it's not every day that us lowly card game players get to talk to somebody like yourself. So it's
Okay, like to be clear, I don't know, like having a following doesn't make you like a worthwhile person, right? Like being good in a video game doesn't make you a worthwhile person, right? I don't know, like people are like, oh, like I can't believe, like you're so big or you're so good at VGC. It's like I'm just a person, right? Like I'm just like I'm not better than you guys because I like have more followers on Twitter. In many cases, people are worse because of their following. So no, it was a pleasure. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. I mean, from what I've gathered in the last hour and 15 minutes, you're a very nice, cool guy.
Thank you.
And as somebody,
I also agree.
It was fun for me, man. I don't get to reach out as us who are smaller content creators. Zach's a pro player, so he probably knows all those cool TCG guys in the community. Personally, for me, I don't get to meet too many people, right?
They just play in his tournaments.
Well, they just play and they don't respect me. You know what I mean? I'm just here. I'm just behind the scenes. I just do things for them and they don't care. I'm just
people who don't respect tournament organizers though are not the brightest in my opinion. Like the tournament organizers, judges, those people are really the unsung heroes, at least in VGC, and they don't get enough praise and enough credit. So it's normally the people who at least like are like complaining when like TOs get paid or whatever. Like they're normally the ones who are like they're not that good at Pokemon because they don't think about things properly, in my opinion. So I'm sure there are lots of people who appreciate the work you do as well because it's important. And without tournament organizers, there's no tournaments, which means there's no pro players. So it's not that difficult to actually think about and realize how essential people like who do the stuff that you do are. So
for sure, man. Oh, my camera died, so I guess that means that we're gonna be done.
That's where we're at. All right, Yell Horn number 6. Always something happening. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you, Wolf, for coming on, man.
Bye.